Happy Tuesday. Today's tech tip, for those of us that have used Google Classroom even just a little bit, has to do with how to clean it up at the end of the year to start the year strong next year. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is make sure you return all work to students in your class. It has to do with sharing permissions and how Google Classroom flips the sharing back and forth. And the other thing you're going to want to do is to archive any classes that you don't plan on using any longer. Let me show you how to do this. Now, I have a whole bunch of classes in Google Classroom. Most of mine are for practice, but you'll see under the hamburger menu here, I can go to my teaching to-do list, and that will show me that I have assignments to review. And whether I choose to grade them or not, I should still return those assignments to students if they've clicked turn in, just so those permissions go back to the student. The other thing that you're going to want to do is once you've returned work to students, is to go back to that tile menu for Google Classroom, which is your classes. And if you have a class that you don't plan on using anymore, after you've returned all the work, you can archive that class. Now, archiving the class does not mean that that class is deleted. What it means is that it goes over here under the classes you're teaching. Then I have classes I'm a student in. And at the very bottom, I have a menu that says archived classes. I can always go back into my archived classes and unarchive the class if I need to access it for some reason. Now, what archiving a class will do then is make it so you're not like me with a bazillion classes here that you have to organize. There are a couple classes that I have been added to as a teacher, and these teachers have very kindly given me teacher access. I will not archive another teacher's class if they've added me. If I don't want it to show up anymore and I'm not working with this teacher anymore, then I simply leave the class as the teacher. Notice that if it's a class that I created, let's find one I've made, I only have archive. But if it belongs to another teacher, it will have leave class as an option for me as a teacher. You might notice that as classes pass, students may leave your class. So I'm in this class as a student. If I click on it, on the three dots, I can choose to unenroll. And some students may choose to do that towards the end of the year, so your classes will be smaller enrollment before you archive them. So now that you've fixed things in your Google Classroom view, it's important to organize things in your Google Drive because Google Classroom is connected to Google Drive. So you want to clean up those folders in Drive and maybe save some exemplary work. So let me show you how to get there. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can go to your classes, and for any class, you can click on the folder on that tile, and it'll take you straight to the folder for Google Classroom. Notice that I'm in my Drive, and I'm in my Classroom folder. And I'm in my Google class called Practice 101, which has no assignments. So I can go to Google Classroom here. Now keep in mind this is in my Drive. Let me back up a little bit. If I'm in my Drive, every classroom that I've ever created has a folder in it, in a folder in Google Drive called Classroom that Google has created for me. Super, super important to never delete this folder. You can move things around in it, you can take things out of it, but don't delete the Classroom folder. Here are all the classes that I have ever created in Google Classroom. It's many more than are on my tiles. So to organize these, I might create a folder in here that says old classes, and then I can start taking these from like 2014-15 and throw those in that folder. Keep in mind that it really doesn't matter how much you have in Google Drive. We have unlimited space. So it just makes sense to put it into some type of organization that will make sense for you. So I've made an old classes folder, and just for fun, I'm going to give it a color. Change that color to yellow. So there's my old classes. If I don't plan on using these classes anymore, I can take my Google Classroom exploration and put it into my old classes. I can take my old PLC Google Classroom, if I don't accidentally open it, and then drop it in there. It's just a grab and drop. looking for my yellow folder because it's alphabetical. And one of the ways that I can make this show up is if I rename it and just give it a 00 in front of it, then it'll always be at the top of my list. So I'm going to take some time today, I think, after doing this tech tip and go through and put all my old classes in an old classes folder. And then when I make new classes next year, it'll create a folder for all my student work. So after I've added the 00, my old classes are here, and I'm going to take some time to organize it. Another thing I could do is create a new folder for Exemplary Work. And maybe I'm going to call that 01 Exemplary Work. And I might take some time to go through the assignments in my Google Classroom and find some really great examples and place some copies in there to use for next year. Now, I already spoke about not deleting the classroom folder. That's super important. The very first time you ever make a Google Classroom class, Google makes a classroom folder for you, and that's where it points all of that data. The other important thing is to not delete your Shared With Me as you're organizing Google Drive. As teachers, we love to be organized. And when we see this Shared With Me stream of consciousness here, I mean, what a mess. There is nothing that you can do about it. If you really need to organize it and it's some things that students have shared with you, you could add it to your drive or make a copy of it for later reference. Other than that, this is simply a news feed of things that have been shared with you. Even if things are shared with you in Drive or turned in Google Classroom, it'll show up here. So that Shared With Me, ignore it. The part that you need to organize is your Drive itself. And the final tip for the end of the year has to do with really thinking about how you've used Google Classroom this year. Reflect on what's worked, what hasn't worked. Collaborate with other teachers. You can put out questions on Twitter, #ShakeUpLearning, #Google Teacher Tribe, and many teachers are willing to share their ideas of what they did, how it worked. I am always happy, Megan is always happy to meet and spend some time with Google Classroom. So have a wonderful end of year. Take some time to organize. I know that's what I'm doing when I sign off here. Have a great Tuesday.